Okay, so as Chani mentioned, today is also besides for the Parsha, which is Parshat Balak, we're also going to be talking about Yud Beis Tammuz, which is a special holiday on the Hasidic calendar, because like Chani mentioned, not only is it the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, is his birthday, it was also his day of liberation. So what happened? What happened on this special day? So he lived from 1880 till 1950, and then the current Lubavitcher Rebbe,
50s.
took over and took off, became the Rebbe. He was in Russia, and during this time in Russia, this was the communist regime. You couldn't teach Torah. Torah was completely forbidden. And of course, a Jew without Torah is like fish without water, so we must have Torah. And so he created a whole system of underground teaching, people teaching Torah. There was schools, chadarim, where the little children were taught. And of course, any time that any of the Soviet regime would come there, they would hide or they would escape. I know many times my own grandfather was, they'd be knocking on the door and they knew as soon as they made sure to have two doors in the homes. There was like a back door and a front door, and as soon as they would knock on the door, you knew it was trouble. So they would come in and he would escape through the back door because you knew that he was going to be an arrest. And what were the arrests for? The arrests were for keeping Judaism, keeping Torah, keeping mitzvot. This was something that you cannot do in communist Russia. And the Frierdiker Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, would make a whole underground system of people who were ready to teach Torah despite the terrible, tremendous danger. And the communists knew about him and they knew what he was doing, and so they therefore arrested him for the work that he was doing. And he was actually sentenced to death. The sentence was commuted, so because of people from the United States, people who got involved and tried to pressure the government, so the sentence was commuted, and he was instead sent to exile to a place called Kostroma, which would be like a far out city where he had to stay in exile. And then on the 12th day of Tammuz, they got the actual notice that he was released. He'd be able to be released from this exile, but it was a Russian civil holiday on the 12th of Tammuz. So instead of him being released on the 12th of Tammuz, it was actually the 13th when he was told about it on the 12th, and on the 13th was when it happened. So the 12th to the 13th are both these days of liberation and days of celebration. And that after he was released from this prison. The prison was in Leningrad, where he was told that he'd be exiled to Kostroma. And then when he was told that he was actually free, they actually expelled him from Russia, from the USSR very soon after. He moved to Warsaw, from where he was continuing to help the people in Russia and trying to continue this, to keep it alive, because he left many students behind who continued his work after he left and continued to teach Torah so that Judaism could stay alive. And this is just so reminiscent of our entire history. They've always hated us, they've always tried to stop Judaism, but this is a little bit more recent. And what happened was, as a result, we're still here studying, and today we still have it. They're still trying to stop us from the river to the sea, where we're going to be talking about the river to the sea tonight. Yeah. So this is really what it's all about. They always they hate us. They try we said Har Sinai was where the sin'ah started, the hatred started. That's where the hatred for the Jewish people started. When we got the Torah and we got our purpose and we got our mission and we got this purpose of godliness in the world, that's when the sin'ah, the opposition to it, started. And the opposition could express itself in, they're too religious, or they're not religious enough, they're too much a part of us, they're too assimilated, they're not assimilated enough, we hate their religion, we hate their land, whatever way you want to put it. Whether we hate the land, whether we hate the Zionists, whatever way you want to put it, whether we hate what they're doing, it's always something about us, about the Jewish people, because we are bringing a godly mission to this world and a godly message to this world, and that's what they hate. That's what the sin'ah is. So this is what happened in communist Russia, and it's interesting to see, like the people who stayed in the Soviet Union, after the Frierdiker Rebbe left, they continued on with such self-sacrifice to do the work that he was doing. It was such a heroic actions, because literally their life was at stake, and yet they continued to teach Torah, to keep the flame going. And it wasn't until many, many years later that many of these Hasidim were able to leave the communist Russia, to leave the communist Soviet Union, and come to America. And it's interesting to see, like it was noted by some people, that the lives that these individuals, these Hasidim, lived after they left Russia was not like so exemplary. Like you didn't look at them as like, they were regular people. Like here, these are these huge heroes who are continuing on and doing such incredible work in the former Soviet Union. And when they left, I mean, they weren't bad people, but they were regular people, regular human beings. And it just goes to show that when the Jewish soul is crushed, when the Jewish soul is put to the test, when the Jewish soul is told, like, we're going to try to separate you from your God, from your Torah, the Jewish soul just shines. It shines so brightly. And when they were here in America, there wasn't those tests and those tribulations and that challenge. So they were regular people. But when they were there, they were these tremendous heroes. And if this sounds a little reminiscent of what we are seeing today, it is. Because if you look at the hostages, when they were in those underground tunnels, you see this beautiful soul that emerges. And before then, they might have been just regular people. And after that, they might be regular people. But when they were imprisoned, when they were taken hostage and treated the way that they were treated because they were Jews, just because they're Jews, the Jewish soul, the neshama, emerges, and it shines so brightly that you see just what heroes they are, just what special people they are. Why? Because they have that Jewish neshama. And we all have that Jewish neshama. You know, it's going to come out, it comes out in difficult situations, and none of us should have those challenges or those difficult situations. But that Jewish neshama, that Yiddish neshama is within us all. And that's what can shine in any circumstance. Sometimes it's only in the difficult situations or challenges of our lives that we see it. And each of us have whatever it is that we are all carrying. But that Yiddish neshama is there, and we have to try to just access it and be connected to it. And we're going to be talking about that in this week's Torah portion as well.
Great.
Now, another thing that we see from this event of what happened, this day of liberation, was another story that touched me personally, is when I heard that Frierdiker Rebbe was in the prison in Leningrad. He was approached by these people, you know, and he was taken into these interrogations rooms where people were tortured terribly. And at one point, the interrogator took out his revolver, his gun, and he says, "This gun has the power of making many a man change their mind and position." And the Frierdiker Rebbe answered very, very bravely. He says, "That little toy has the power over people that believe in many gods and one world. I, however, believe in one God and in two worlds." And the words are this world and the world to come. So these words are such powerful words, but I think it's for us to really evaluate, what do those words mean? What is the power of the gun? What power, what God is it that has power over us? And there are gods that have, God's little gods, that have power over all of us. And if you think about things in your life, what is it that is pushing you, motivating you to do something? So for example, somebody who is a real explorer, someone who's climbing Mount Everest, you might say, oh, it's scary to climb Mount Everest. It's dangerous. A lot of people have hurt themselves badly, even died climbing Mount Everest. And what will he say? Well, I'm going to climb it because this is my goal. This is what I want to do. This is what I consider important. Climbing Mount Everest is important to him. That's his God. For some of us, it's working so hard day and night, and you'll say to somebody, but you're going to take that job? It's going to sap you of your energy, sap you of your strength. And he'll say, yeah, but I'm going to be making the money on it. So for sometimes it's money that's our God. Sometimes it's health that's our God. Sometimes it's what other people are going to think of me that's our God. We all have our little gods, little G gods, right? Things that are important to us, things that we'll say, yeah, I'll do it because of. Sometimes you'll say to somebody, it's dangerous to do that. And they'll say, but it's fun, right? Kids will often say, but it's fun. Teenagers, but it's fun. Fun is kids' gods. It's teenagers' gods. So we all have those little G gods. And I think we need to evaluate sometimes, what is our God? What is the thing that is going to stop us or motivate us to do something? What is our big G God? Of course, that's God and God alone. Our God. And what is it that can motivate us and cause us to stop? So do we take the job because it's going to be a cause of money? Do we look at our families as our values? Do we look at what is it that stops us from doing something? Do we say Shabbat is something that this is it? When it comes to Shabbat, I stop. Or is it the money? Or is it the job? Or is it, what is it that's our values? What is it that is going to stop us? And I think that's what the story really teaches us. What is the God? What is the revolver? What is the God that is going to motivate us or stop us from doing things? And you know, when the Frierdiker Rebbe was in Russia, like we said, he made a whole bunch of networks of schools. He also made underground mikvaot, which is mikvahs. And it was there that people would go in the ice and break the ice in order to go. And today, of course, we have beautiful mikvahs that we can go to, that we can immerse in. We have beautiful supermarkets with kosher. We have all these things at our fingertips. So what is it that is our big G God? What is it that we are saying, this is my value, this is what is important to me, this is what I will not do something because this is so important to me, or I will do something because this is what's important to me. So that's what I take from that story of the revolver and the God. And this brings us really to this week's Torah portion, which is Parshat Balak. And the Parsha starts off with Balak, who is the king of Moab. And this king of Moab he hires Bilaam to curse the Jewish people. Okay, we've always had, like we said, throughout the ages, from the beginning to the end, there's always people who want to curse the Jewish people, who want to destroy the Jewish people. And they do it in all different kinds of ways, whether it's taking our hostages or creating a Holocaust or suppressing us in communist Russia, whatever mode it is, it's been throughout all the generations. So for Balak, it was hiring Bilaam, this sorcerer, to curse the Jews. And Bilaam, we're told, was an incredible sorcerer. He was an incredible communicator with God. It says that God put zel u'mat zeh. If he has someone who's holy like Moshe, we have to have a leader like Bilaam who can lead the nations, and yet he's doing it in a negative way. So we see him using his talents and him using his capabilities, but for the bad. So he's hired to curse the Jewish people. And throughout the Parsha, it goes through the different story of what happens. He's on the way. He's happy to go curse the Jewish people. He tries 3 times to curse the Jewish people. And every time he tries to curse the Jewish people, his mouth opens and only blessings come out, the greatest blessings possible. From him, we have the blessings of, we say in our daily prayers, Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, how goodly are your tents, Yaakov, how the Jewish people live with such modesty, and we live not looking into each other's tents, but we are a modest people. From his blessings, we also have the blessing of Kol ha'mevarechecha baruch, whoever blesses you will be blessed, and whoever curses you will be cursed, which, by the way, nowadays is very much cited by a lot of non-Jews about the Jewish people. A lot of righteous non-Jews are realizing this and citing it. We also have the blessing that the Jewish people will rise like a lion, which we just had. We rose like a lion, rise like a lion to do God's will. So we have some tremendous blessings in this week's Torah portion. And of course, the greatest blessing is also the blessing about Mashiach. So the greatest blessing is that a king will arise from Yaakov, and he will be the Mashiach of the world, the Redeemer of the world, and he will be there to teach the Jewish people. And this is one of the places where we actually have the idea of Mashiach being an actual human being, a person who's going to be a king, who will teach the world through his words and through his wisdom. He will bring the world to a place of completion where he will teach the truth. Now, it's interesting to see how Balak intended for curses on the Jewish people, and the curses became completely transformed into the greatest, not only blessings, but the greatest blessings ever. And this is a lesson for us. You know, what sometimes appears to be the worst possible curse can actually be transformed into the greatest blessings. And we just need to keep our faith and keep strong. It seems like it's so bad sometimes. It seems like it's so horrific. And we can't lose sight of what is horrific. We're realists. We're not like just people floating and then everything is great and everything is wonderful. But a certain part of us has to rise above it and say, hold on. From this terrible, terrible curse will come out the greatest blessings, because God is our God, and God is good, and God is watching us, and we are God's people, and so God is not going to allow our destruction ever. And this is what we see with Balak, who from his curses, from the curses of Bilaam, came out the greatest blessings. So one of the blessings that I want to talk about is talking about the blessings of Mashiach, that Mashiach is going to come. And when we talk about Mashiach in the world, when we talk about a king coming and teaching, and by the way, when we think about it today, it's so not far-fetched to have a person who's a very charismatic person, whose mouth teaches truth. The world is so seeking truth. It's so easy to have a charismatic individual who really people are seeking, people are looking for leadership, and leadership that's honest and good leadership and truthful leadership, and leadership that is going to take the world in a positive direction. And that kind of leadership in our day and age, it's so easy to have this leadership because the communication is all over. You just have some person who's going to be a charismatic leader who can express the truth in a proper way, who can teach the world the truth, and that person can have hundreds of millions of an influencer, right? Influencers have hundreds of millions of views, hundreds of millions of clicks. So it's so easy for that information to spread like wildfire because people are truly seeking it. And that's what we see in today's day and age. In the previous generations, you could only talk to a very limited amount of people, to the people that are in your room, to the people that are around you, and how many people could you reach? But today, through technology, through internet, through news, through everything, you can reach literally the entire world in a few seconds. The news spreads like wildfire. Something that happened tonight, you already know that's for the bad, but unfortunately, but things spread like crazy. So if we could just have that, that vision of this happening, this actually happening, it's so much easier to envision it in today's times. So when it comes to Mashiach, we can't just say, oh, well, this great leader is just going to come and create this tremendous revolution and create this change in our world, and we could just fold our arms and sit back and watch it while eating popcorn. Watch the movie erupt in front of us, because that's not how it works. The Alter Rebbe teaches us that we each have a little piece of Mashiach inside of us, inside of our soul. There's that little piece of Mashiach. Each and every one of us has it.
I like it.
And it's up to us to actualize, to manifest that spark of Mashiach that's within us. And when each of us manifest that spark and find that spark and bring that spark to reality, then the entire world is going to be suffused with these little tiny sparks, which will create that big spark, that big change. And that is how everything that we do is so connected. We spoke very often about how whatever we do here helps the Jews in Eretz Yisrael and Israel. It helps them. And they feel the help. They feel it because we are one body and one soul. So each of us has that spark. Ispashtusa shel Moshe, that little spark of Moshe, that little spark of Mashiach within us. And we just need to reveal it, to manifest it, to bring it to light. And once we do bring that to light, we've created that revolution. So it's not for us to just say, okay, we're going to sit back till this charismatic leader comes and gives his wonderful speech and changes the world. No, it's about each of us creating that environment and living that life. How do we manifest that spark of Mashiach? It sounds great, like everyone's into manifesting nowadays, right? How are we manifesting that spark? We're living a Mashiach reality. We're living a reality that we want to live when Mashiach comes. We're living a life that we want to live when Mashiach is here. A life of goodness, a life of kindness, a life of Torah, a life of mitzvot, a life of studying Torah and delving into its secrets and its lessons for us. That is how we manifest Mashiach in this world. So, in this week's parsha, we're told that Mashiach, this is again from the mouth of Bilaam, this non-Jew, he teaches us that what is this Mashiach going to come? And he describes it as Vayerd miyam ad yam, and he will rule from yam ad yam, from sea to sea. Umi nahar, and from the river ad afse haaretz, until the ends of the earth. So talking about this king of Mashiach, who's going to bring peace and goodness to our world, this king is going to rule from yam ad yam, from sea to sea, and from river until the ends of the earth. And the question we have here is, why is it talking about seas and rivers? I mean, now we know, because from the river to the sea, right? But why is it talking about seas and rivers? He's going to be teaching people. So talk about the lands. Why is it talking about sea to sea? And why is it having this double wording? He's going from one sea to the other sea, and from a river till the ends of the land. Like, what is this about the seas and about the rivers? So in order to understand this, we need to say that the reason why it's doing this is because it's teaching us now how to manifest that spark of Mashiach that we have in us to do what Mashiach is supposed to do, which is to rule from sea to sea and from river till the ends of the earth. Now, what in the world is she talking about, right? What are you talking about? Like, how am I supposed to be acting in a way from sea to sea and from river until the ends of the earth? So let's examine what are these words and what is it teaching us. So when we talk about our personal redemption, the way that it happens is through two parts. The first part is from sea to sea. What is a sea? When you think about the sea, what is the sea? What's the sea different than the land? It's water.
And it changes.
Exactly. It's water that covers the land. It's water that covers everything that's underneath it. So you cannot see what's really underneath it because the water is covering it. You can't see all the land, all these sea creatures that are in there, whereas on land you can see people, you can see land animals, you can see it. It's noticeable. The sea refers to, in Kabbalistic terminology, is more the subconscious, like what's underneath it, what's going on inside of you. So when we talk about the sea to the sea, we're talking about the sea is what's within you. Dry land is what is on the outside. Dry land is what people see. Dry land is the actions that people see you doing. The sea is what is going on inside of you, what your process is before you get to that action that people see. So people are seeing now you from the outside, you eating, you're doing your writing, but no one's seeing what's going on inside of you. What are you thinking inside? What are your thought process? What is causing you to do the actions that you are doing? So when it talks about Mashiach coming from sea to sea, we're talking about the process that's within the person. What is the process that's going on? What is the first sea to sea? What is the first thing that causes a person to act on something? So when you looked at the table and you looked at the cake, what was going through your head was, I want to eat it. You were thinking, that looks good, right? That looks good, I want to eat it, right? It was only afterwards, after you said, okay, that looks good, or it smells good, or whatever senses you used, after your brain said, I want it, then your mouth said, okay, I'm going to eat it, and you actually did the eating. So when we talk about from C to C, and when you think about any action, you know, when you're told, when you see somebody that needs help, and someone could be a friend of yours, it could be a stranger on the street, what is telling you, before you actually stop and help the person, it's your brain that's saying to you, hey, look, that person needs help. I should really stop and help that person. Or my friend, she's going through a hard time. I should give her a call. I should call her up. It's your brain that is telling you to act. It's then when you act, you're actually doing the action. But the first process is going through your brain. What is your brain thinking? And when we talk about what we do in life, and this is what we were saying before about the revolver, and there's many gods and one God, what is your values? What is your values? What is important to you? So your brain has to decide that. Your brain has to decide, what is important to me? What are my values in life? What is something that is an ideal for me? What is my life want? What do I want my life to look like? That's all calculated by your brain. It needs to be calculated by your brain. Now, sometimes it's not our brain that's thinking, because we're looking at the cake and we're saying, I want it, when we're thinking, oh, I really don't need it, right? So we're not thinking through our brain. We're thinking through maybe our heart or some other part of us, or our impulse. But really, the way that we're supposed to be doing things is our brain should be dictating what we should be doing. So our first thing has to be from C to C. The first C is the brain. And in Hasidic terminology, we say, Moach Shalit al Halev. The brain, the thinking, rules over the heart. In order to be moral people, our brain must rule over the heart. The brain must be the one that determines what we're going to be doing. Do we want to sit all day long and waste our time? Or does the brain say, no, we need to be a productive person. We need to lead a productive life. This is how we can make our lives productive. So it has to start with the C, the brain, the thought process. And in our thought process, we have to decide, what are our values? What is our little G God? What is our big G God? What is it that I want out of life? What is my mission? What is my purpose? What is meaningful to me? What would a meaningful life look like? So that C has to be our brain thinking and evaluating. And sometimes we go through life without taking that step. We just go through life and through the circumstances of life, and we don't stop to actually think, what is important to me? What are my values? What do I want my life to really look like? And we need to do that thought process. Sometimes we just eat without thinking, what is healthy? What is really what's healthy? Sometimes we just go through life thinking we don't think about, what kind of a parent do I want to be? We have children, so we're just going to be taking care of the running here, running there, taking them here, the carpals, the this, the that. Stop, think, hold on. What kind of parent do you want to be? You get married and you're like, okay, I'm married. No, what kind of spouse do you want to be? What kind of a relationship do you want to build? In every area of our lives, there has to be that first C, that first from C to C, that first C that thinks about, what is it that I want from my life? What is it that are my values? What is it that I create this picture in my mind's eye of what kind of life I want to lead, what kind of relationship I want to lead, what kind of parent I want to be, what kind of worker I want to be, how moral of a person do I want to be. This is all in the mind. The next step is, from C to C, the actual putting it into implementing it, making the C, the brain, the first step and not my impulses. So I'm not grabbing the cake as soon as I see it. I'm not grabbing the money because it's money, but I'm going through my mind. I'm first evaluating, what are my values? So the first, I evaluate my values, and the next step is making sure that my values are carrying through in my actions, right? It's coming through in my actions. And it's great to evaluate things. Sometimes you make these resolutions on January 1st, right? Oh, I'm going to be this and that. Or you make these resolutions, when you get married or when you have a baby. Oh, I'm going to be the best parent. It's all great, right? But then how are you coming through with it in your actions? So it's got to be from C to C. It's got to be from your brain to your actual actions, to your actually implementing what it is that you've decided are your values. So to create a Mashiach Dika world in our world, we need to act from C to C. We need to be in control of our impulses. We need to first evaluate what it is that our values are, and then actually control our impulses or make procedures that we can be more in tune and inclined to listen to our brain, so that the mayach shalit alalev, the brain is actually the one in charge, not my heart that just wants, and that just is my impulses that are just pulled to something. Now, the next part is, okay, so great, we're all perfect people now, right? We're working so much in sync with our brains, and we're doing it in the right way, so what's left? And that's when we see the next part, and that is minahar, from the river until the ends of the earth. And what does this mean? So the first river, that when it talks about a nahar, the first time in the Torah that it talks about the nahar, it says there was a nahar that went out of the Garden of Eden. And this was the Euphrates River. And this river that went out of the Garden of Eden, where Adam and Chava were, was supposed to irrigate the entire garden, the entire world that they were in. Now the garden was the Garden of Eden, but the garden in our world is the entire world. It says God's garden is our world. God looks at our world, and we might look at our world and see a mess. Sometimes you really look at it and you see if it's a garden, it's definitely the weeds, right? It's a mess, but God doesn't look at our world that way. It says, Basi Lagani, God talks about our world as it's my garden, my beautiful garden. That this is the place where the most beautiful illuminations and revelations can happen. This is the place where it's meant to be. This is where it is. So when we talk about the garden, we're talking about the world. From the river to the ends of the earth is talking about it's not enough for us to just be people that are focused on my goodness and my mission and my purpose and working on myself and making sure I'm a self-disciplined person so that my brain is actually in charge of my actions. But it's now, okay, that's great. Now what are you going to do for the rest of the world? That's great that you personally are like that. That's not enough though. How are you going to convince other people? How are you going to persuade other people? How are you going to make other people's lives positive? Take the lessons that you learned and teach it to others. Expose it to others. As we say in Hasidic phrases, if you know an aleph, teach an aleph. You know something? Teach it. It's not good enough that you know it. It's not good enough that you're a rich person, that you have these spiritual riches or material riches. You need to affect the entire world with what you know. And that is the second part, that Mashiach goes from the Nahar, from the river till the ends of the earth. Take your river and make sure you're irrigating the entire world, because it's not good enough that you've worked on yourself. That's wonderful. That's a hard enough thing that we would say, wow, what a great person. But we're not like other religions where it says, go and meditate on the mountain and reach your nirvana or reach your spiritual bliss and then you're good. No. That's not good enough. Take what you know and teach it to others. Make an effect on others. And there's many ways that we can do that. You have something positive in your life. You have a Shabbat meal at your home. So great, that's something that you're doing. You thought about it, you processed it, you said in your brain, it's important for family time, for spirituality, for whatever it is, to have this family meal together. I'm going to make it on Friday night. Great, you thought about it, you said what's important, you valued that, you actually implemented it into action, you caused a schedule in your week so that you've actually created an ability to make that Shabbat meal. But now, what about inviting someone else to your meal? That's the river to the ends of the earth. And this is in so many areas of your life. You've created a positive change in your world. It's not by, scolding other people. Oh, you've got to keep kosher. That's not about it. It's not about saying, oh, you got to keep Shabbos. No, but you have a beauty in your life. Share it. Share it with others. You come to this class, share it with others. As you mentioned, you shared it with others. Yeah, you. You share it with you share it with others. You share it with other people. You've realized something, you go and you share it with others. It's not enough to keep that knowledge or keep that information in yourself, not by condescending, not by, by lecturing anybody, but you want to come for the Shabbos meal? It's such a nice time. Why don't you come? Why don't you join me? There's so many ways that we can all share with others what we are experiencing. And that's how we really live Mashiach-dik life. That's how we cause that spark of Mashiach within us to be manifest and actualized, and how we create that environment in the entire world. And the more that we have this spark of Mashiach exposed and manifest, the closer that we get to this point where the actual Mashiach comes and teaches the world, because the world is already ripe, it's already set for it. The ground has already been planted, the seeds have already been planted, and we've already watered it, so it's so much easier for them to spray. And there was, we'll conclude with this story that I saw that was going around from Rabbi Simon Jacobson. Did you hear that? Did you read that email? It was going around that he got this email from an individual who said, I was thinking about what was going on in Israel, and it was someone who's in Poughkeepsie, right, which is not so far from here. This was a person who was plays a DJ or whatever. He plays music in a bar, and he's thinking about the situation in Israel. And as he's playing, he's saying, let me do something Jewish. So he plays Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, right? Because something in him wanted to play Shalom Aleichem, and he said something about Shabbos. This is what he sings it. And he played it, and that was it. And then he gets a dream, right? Am I saying it right? He gets a dream that night that the Rebbe's secretary, the Lubavitcher Rebbe's secretary, comes to him and says to him, because you just sang that song, Shalom Aleichem, there was a woman in the crowd who you ignited her Jewish roots, her Jewish spark, her Jewish neshama. And as you ignited her Jewish neshama, she decided that she's going to start lighting Shabbat candles because of your singing that song. And he wakes up in the morning and he's like, this was crazy. Like, there's no way that it's true. And then he gets a call from the lady who actually says to him,
she looked him up.
She looked him up and she found him, and she says, I was in the bar that night and you sang that song, and I'm a Jewish woman, and there was not very many Jewish people in that bar. But as a result of you singing that song, you ignited something in me, and I too lit Shabbat candles for the Jews in Israel so that there should be safety and security for them. And this is how we spread the message. This is how we do it in a positive way. This is how we go from Nahar, from the river, to the ends of the earth, and how we activate ourselves to be people who follow our mission, follow what's important to us, follow our brains to actually act in that way, and not only do it ourselves, but create that change in the world. And may that change be very, very soon, because we all need it.
Amen. Amen.